ripped out a nice ham, and then had some sweet potato casserole, and I definitely ate too much, laid around, and did swim in the pool a little bit Sunday afternoon, played some bossy ball with the family, and we were going to play some pickleball, but we had eaten too much, so we couldn't do that. But and then went over to my other daughter Stephanie's house later on that night, and spent a little bit of time with them, and found out about their Easter egg hunt and stuff for the little one, you know, Ava. But anyway, good to see some of y'all watching in this morning, Dottie and Kathy, and several others I know that are watching this morning. You know, of course, we celebrated this last Easter, and this last Sunday is Easter and Resurrection Day, and I know that again we're missing being around people, missing being around our family, our church family, and praying really right now that we might be able to meet together as a family by the 1st of May. I don't know how things are going, and but looking forward to that. I know that as preacher has said, and we've said before, that it sure is strange. It sure is different, not coming into an empty auditorium and then having services that way. But really looking forward to being able to see everybody again, especially be able to teach my Sunday school class. We'll do that. Last Sunday I did a special message on the prophecies of Christ fulfilled in the Bible, and this next week we will get started back into the book of Revelation and continue our study there. And just want to mention this morning, I'll read a couple verses, and you know, this story never gets old to us, but listen along for just a few minutes. I got some scriptures here that I want to read, but and then I'm going to give you a little outline that I preached years ago about what happens when we really see Jesus. And in Matthew chapter 28, it says this: "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone of the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him the keepers did shake, and became as dead men. And the angel answered and said unto the woman, Fear ye not, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. As he said, Come, see the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he goeth before you into Galilee, and there shall ye see him. Lo, I have told you." I think it's important that we, as we see this story here fulfilled, and how that they went to the tomb and they found it empty. We talked about that last Sunday, and they went to go see him, and everything they did from there on out was focused around seeing Jesus. Really, what happens when we really see Jesus? Message that I had years ago was, what happens when we really see Jesus? I think there's a couple things that happen when we really see him, really recognize who he is. First thing I got down here was humility becomes commonplace. You know, we can look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. It says this: "And when they came into the house, they saw the young child." And this was the wise men looking for the baby. And we know that if you study the scriptures out properly, you'll find out the wise men did not come to the nativity scene. They came to a house where the young child was. In fact, the scripture says they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented to him gold and frankincense and myrrh. And then also that we know that if we humble ourselves, when we recognize who Jesus is, that's so important. 2 Chronicles 7:14, I used this a couple weeks ago, I believe. It says this, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. James 4:10 says, humble yourself in the sight of the Lord and he shall lift you up. When you really see who Jesus is, you're going to humble yourselves. Humility becomes commonplace in our lives. You know, when we see Jesus and really see who he is, I believe our treasures become a sacrifice. In that verse where we were talking about the wise men coming to the young child, I believe in Nazareth at the time, that when they brought those gifts, they gave those gifts something very valuable to them as a gift to the Lord. You know, another reference is John 12:3. It says, then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly. And we know that she anointed Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And it was something that was very costly. It was something that cost her something. A good example of cost is when David said in 2 Samuel 24:24, the king said unto Uriah, nay, but I will surely buy it of thee at a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God of that which doth cost me nothing. So when we see Jesus, whatever we own, our treasures become sacrifice. You know, I kid around and I was going to do a broadcast from my boat. We got the good news this week that the ramps are open now. We can take the boat out. Weather hadn't been good for that, you know. And but I kid around about my boat and stuff. And like I said, I was going to do a broadcast while it was sitting on dry land, and how much I desired to be back out in that boat. But you know, I've given my boat over to the Lord. Now, some might say, yeah, I wish I had a boat to give to the Lord. But I've used it for opportunities to take people out fishing, that missionaries, and taking them out to enjoy things. And me having that, I want to be able to use whatever I have for the Lord. And I think that's how we need to be. You know, another thing that happens when we really see who Jesus is, truth becomes turmoil. And we see a picture of that in Matthew 8:34. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart. He had just healed somebody, a miraculous miracle of the maniac of Gadara. And when they saw that he had healed this maniac, something troubling happened. They asked him to leave. Can't understand that. I had a thing that where I put down some things I just don't understand about the Bible. You know, and that was one of them. Why that after they see this great miracle, this man that was completely changed, why they want to get rid of Jesus and why they want to get him out of town. Don't understand that. Truth became turmoil to them at that time. Another example of that I found was in Galatians 4:16. It says this, am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Well, there's a lot of people out there that don't want to hear the truth right now. There's a lot of people that are living in their own wicked way, and they don't want to hear the truth of the gospel. And the truth of the gospel becomes turmoil to them. But when we see Jesus really for who he is, just like he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man come to the Father but by me. A lot of people don't want to accept that. When we see Jesus, our truth becomes turmoil to us. You know, I think when we see Jesus, our doubt takes a new route. In John 20:25, it says this, the other disciples therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I shall see, and in his hands the prints of his nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. You know who's that's talking about? It's talking about Thomas. Sad to say, my middle name is Thomas. Thomas was considered or called the doubter because he said, unless I see Jesus, I'm not going to believe. You know what? He got to see Jesus. Later on in the verses, in the 28th verse, it says, and Thomas answered and said unto him, my Lord and my God. See, that doubt took a new route when he really realized who Jesus was. We need to see Jesus for who he is. And you know what? When we see Jesus, really, that's all that we really should see. Matthew 17:8 says this, and when they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no man save Jesus only. Well, I tell you what, that would get our eyes off the focus of this world. Get tired of turning on the news every day. It's about the coronavirus and the shutdown and things going on, and gets depressing. I know right now Florida's getting ready to peak out of coronaviruses. I pray that it's peaking, that we'll be done with it and tired of hearing it. But you know what? If we focus on Jesus, if we really look to see Jesus, a lot of that's not going to get our attention because we're seeing who Jesus really is. You know, another thing that happens when we really see Jesus, I believe evil has to leave. And in Mark 3:11, it says, and unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him and cried, saying, thou art the Son of God. You know what? When we see Jesus, evil's not going to be in our life. We're not going to live that life of sin. Because why? We're focused on him. Evil's got to flee when Jesus is around. Hey, you know what? Another thing that happens when we see Jesus, storms of life disappear. And of course, we know that story in Mark 6:49. When they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been in a spirit and cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said unto them, be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased. And they were sore amazed at themselves beyond measure and wondered. When we really see Jesus for who he is, the storms of life are going to disappear. Just like we saw that example there when he got in the boat. You know what? Another thing happens when we see Jesus. The impossible becomes a reality. You know, I've been praying every morning, and you've heard me say this before. I pray that no one that I personally know will come down with this virus. I mentioned it the other morning that there's only one person I know of that I knew as a teenager. She was in my youth group. Was a good friend of my oldest daughter. It's found out that she's got the coronavirus, but I don't know what extent. But I'm praying still that no one that we know close and personal will come down with this virus. You know, the reality of that going around is scary, really, unless you focus on who Jesus is. The impossible becomes reality. Mark 16:4 says, and when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was really great. It was very great. Of course, they came that morning to see Jesus in the tomb, visit the tomb, But when they got there, they noticed the stone was gone. It was rolled away. And they didn't see Jesus because he wasn't there. They saw him later, though. A miracle had taken place. Something special, the impossible, had happened. They were looking for Jesus, and they found him. He was alive. You know, our heavy burdens become light when we really see Jesus. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. When we see Jesus, we can lay our burdens upon him. And the last thing I want to point out to you, and I got an itch in my eye, at least I'm not coughing today. The last thing I want to say to you is when we see Jesus, most importantly, when we really let him take possession of our lives and we really look to him and really focus on him, guess what? Others are going to see him too. It says this in Acts 4:13. Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus. When we see Jesus and he becomes evident in our life, guess what? Even though we be like them, and I classify myself in this category, ignorant and unlearned men. I got 2 college degrees, but I'm just a common person, I consider myself. I just want to be used of God, and I want people to see Jesus in me. And that's the most important thing. Because when people see Jesus in you, they're going to desire to have that same thing. It goes on to say in John 4:39, it says this, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman, which testified, he told me all that I ever did. We know that story out of John where it talks about the woman at the well and how that he finally announced himself to her, who he was. She believed on him. And she was so excited about that, she went back into the city because she had seen the Savior. And she wanted others to know about that. And because of her testimony, others got saved. Then we know that they came to where he was at. And some of them, when they personally saw Jesus, they believed on him also. Well, I tell you what, it makes a difference in our lives when we see Jesus and we focus on him. Make him all that we need to see. Have him so evident in our lives that others see him in us too. Well, enjoyed spending some time with you today and look forward. Actually, I don't look forward to doing this again. I wish we could do it in person. But God bless. Love you and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.